Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
So today, how do we figure out our evaluations? Well, it needs to be standardized, which this doctor that had 10 different valuations, the interesting thing and what I want you to be acutely aware of is that his EBITDA was different in all 10 offers. And why is that important? Well, who the hell's figuring this? I mean, it either is an EBITDA or it's not.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Bruce B. Baird, and you're listening to the Productive Dentist Podcast. In this podcast, I will give you everything that I've learned over the last 40 years in dentistry, working with thousands of dentists. I'll tell you, it's not that my way is the only way. It's just one that has worked extremely well for me, and I'd love to share that with you so you too can enjoy the choices and lifestyle that productivity allows. More time for things you love, increased pay, better team relationships, and lowered stress. Let's get into it with this week's episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.
Hi, this is Dr. Bruce Baird with the Productive Dentist Podcast. Boy, I sure appreciate all the votes for the Productive Dentist Podcast in the recent voting for the best podcast in dentistry. And I appreciate any of you that voted for me, and also for Victoria Peterson, my partner, who does the Investment Grade Practice podcast, as well as Reagan Robertson and Chad Johnson, who do Everyday Practices podcast. We had a 3 out of the top 5 this past year, and we're hoping to do that again this year. Today, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is something that, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about 10 years ago. And I'm being involved in some other businesses and other things. I started hearing the word EBITDA a lot, EBIDD. Anyway, EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation. And why is that an important number? Why is that something that you should know? Well, the main reason is that's the actual thing that private equity or people who are looking at purchasing your practice, DSOs, they come in and they say, they tell you what your EBITDA is. Now, there's a problem in that. And I will tell you, I was just lecturing in Honolulu 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And there were about 40 dentists in the room. And believe me, this is not unusual. I could do this in any state in the U.S. And I just asked a simple question: who here knows what EBITDA is? And nobody raised their hand, which, like I say, that's normal operating procedure. So because we're just not used to it. We're not the business guys that follow that, but we're changing that today because we hear so much from, the consolidation of dentistry. And what is the consolidation? Consolidation is obviously what's happening right now with private equity coming in, DSOs coming in, which is private equity, coming in and purchasing practices all over the country. And this consolidation will go on for probably another 7 years. I've heard it as long as 9 and as short as 5, but this consolidation will continue to happen until we get to about 65 or 70% consolidated. What does that mean? That means 65% of the practices out there are going to be purchased by some DSO or private equity. And you might think, well, that's scary as hell. And yeah, it can be. But what I will tell you is there are unique opportunities out there. And I've been telling people, why would you ever sell your practice to private equity when you're 40 years old? Well, now the average dentist that's doing it is 41. So, and now I actually realize I've gone around apologizing to dentists who've been through the Productive Dentist Academy saying, guys, I was wrong. Things have definitely changed. But when we start talking about EBITDA, why is that an important number to know and to standardize? Well, we have one doctor that we got the opportunity we're working with right now who's had 10 offers from 10 different DSOs. And interestingly enough, of course, they figure the EBITDA. When Heartland bought my practice 12 years ago, they said, this is how much we're going to give you for your practice. And I was like, okay, that's a lot of money. Sounds good. I had no idea what EBITDA was. Today, you start to hear it in the conversations. If you've had any conversations with a DSO, they'll say, oh, yes, we're going to give you a 5x multiple of your EBITDA. Meaning, if your EBITDA is $200,000, that practice valuation is $1 million. If your EBITDA is $500,000, then you're going to get $2.5 million. Whereas before consolidation, it might be 65% of your previous year's 12 months collections. That was kind of a standard. That 65%, we're going to, do that. If you were doing $1 million a year, you're going to make $650,000. And that, like I say, that's been fairly standard until this consolidation began. And so today, how do we figure out our valuations? Well, it needs to be standardized, which this doctor that had 10 different valuations, the interesting thing and what I want you to be acutely aware of is that his EBITDA was different in all 10 offers. And why is that important? Well, who the hell's figuring this? I mean, it either is an EBITDA or it's not. And each one of these groups, they're out. I mean, this is a capitalist environment, and this is private equity, and their intention is to make as much money as possible. So I start hearing, EBITDA, and then we start hearing multiples. And where, a few years ago, when this consolidation first started, it might have been a 4x or 5x multiple. Well, it kind of bothers me that it becomes a 5x multiple. So if you had a 500,000, they offer you $2.5 million for your practice. And you say, wow, that's good. That's a great price. That also just became worth 9 times what they paid you. So it just became worth $4.5 million to them. And so it's kind of an interesting thing because they're going to get a larger multiple by aggregating lots of practices. That's something that Productive Dentist Academy is working on now with our investment grade practice workshops that we're doing. We're trying to look at your profits in your business and determine what your true EBITDA is so that you're not being jacked around with 10 different DSOs. And let me explain to you how that works. You've got one DSO and everybody's saying, well, I got a 7X. When they go, really? Well, I got a 6. Well, I should have used you guys. Well, let's just look at a 5X compared to a 10X multiple. Somebody says, you have one group says you have a $200,000 EBITDA and we're going to give you a 5X. We're going to give you $1 million. Somebody else says, oh no, we're going to give you a 10X, but your EBITDA is only 100,000. So we're going to give you $1 million. So I hope that resonates with you, that you need to have somebody helping you. And there are people out there, that are doing that are helping people determine what is the valuation of their business. And that's something that investment grade practices and what we're doing with our productivity workshops, we're actually going in and looking and working towards finding out what your true EBITDA is. And that is EBITDA across the board. In other words, if I have 10 dentists come in, it's all figured the same way so that when we get offers, it's all done the same way. There are people out there that have a thought process that, yes, I'm interested in selling my practice. And I am going to list, there's people out there right now that are saying, oh yeah, we're going to have our own DSO thing and the money's there and you need to sell now. And it's just because everything's going to collapse. You need to have control. And they're requesting $20,000 just to do a practice valuation. Well, that's very interesting, considering we don't charge anything. They're charging $20,000 and then they're charging additional money to be part of their group, their membership group. That money is wasted money, in my opinion. And from my perspective, there are a lot better ways of going about selling your practice to a DSO. Years ago, I heard, what happens if all dentists get together and do the same thing? And Greg Stanley years ago said, well, you'll all get hosed together, meaning you're all going to get screwed together. And I kind of think that that's true. And I've seen some of my really good friends going with a couple of these groups that are basically charging them arm and a leg for something that they shouldn't even be charging for. If in fact, the more dentists you have, the more money comes into the game, then why should you have to pay to be part of that? Why is that? And so, when I look at those things, I just want everyone to understand and to be on the same page that this is new for most of us. Most dentists don't even know what EBITDA is. When I sold my practice, we had a great practice. I sold it for over $5 million. So it was a great deal. I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. If I had done that today, my opportunities could have been very easily in the $15 to $25 million range. Now people say, what? Yeah. That's what's happening right now. So we've got this 5 to 7 year window that is out there. Does that mean that you have to sell now? No. It doesn't mean you have to sell now. Does it mean I have to sell within 7 years? No. You can still have a high value fee for service practice that includes the specialties, does everything that you want to do in your practice. You don't refer anything out. You're killing it. You have an EBITDA of $1 million a year. So you're making a profit of $1 million a year, and you can continue to do that for the rest of your life and never sell your practice. So the pressure you see, another friend, which is why I sold. I had some buddies that had a big practice. They sold. And so I said, man, it must be good. Yeah. And it was back during the original time of Obamacare. I didn't know, gosh, I had a large office, a lot of team. I was going to have to start providing all these services and benefits for them. And I was scared. And that's being about as honest as I can be with you. I was just simply scared. So when we look at this, I just want you to be knowledgeable. We're going to be having a investment grade practice workshop on, I believe it's the 3rd and 4th of March. So it's only a month away. And it's something that, man, if you have an interest in finding out what is my practice truly worth, we have no interest in deciding whether you want to sell your practice or not. We want to give you all the information that you need so that you can make the right decision. When other people are telling you, independently, oh yeah, you're worth this, you're worth that, and there's 10 different groups telling you you're worth 10 different things, to me, that opens up a lot of skepticism in my book. And again, when I sold, I didn't even know what my EBITDA was. I just thought it was a lot of money. And so you can get tricked by the amount when in fact you would be leaving hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the table. So anyway, I'm going to be talking more about this over the next, probably 3 or 4 or 5 podcasts about what PDA is doing and how we're kind of partnering with doctors so that they can get the right information. That makes sense. We're still doing our productivity workshops. We can still grow your production by over $300 an hour, which is $460,000 a year on an average 1,600 hour work year. And it's not hard. It's really not hard to increase almost $500,000. It's just has to do with communication, scheduling, and comprehensive exams. So anyway, that's all for today, and I hope this finds you healthy, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. And
thank you for joining me for this episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you subscribe. Pass it along to a friend. Give us a like on iTunes and Spotify, or drop me an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. Don't forget to check out other podcasts from the Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentistpodcast.com. Join me again next week for another episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.